Your first time is very important. Your first kiss, your first car, your first time getting your asshole sucked by a literal clown behind a Denny's. These firsts are romanticized and highly regarded across our society. And it makes sense that the first of something should be so significant to us. Namely, our brains release more of the pleasure chemicals the first time we experience something new. At least I think they do. I'm honestly far closer to being the Denny's clown than a brain scientist, so probably don't use this video as a source for your biology thesis. Point is, and to connect this frankly bizarre intro into the series at hand, Assassin's Creed was several very important firsts for me. Ass Creed 2 specifically, as it was the first entry in the series I played. It was the first M-rated game I actually played through on my own, and since the only previous experience I'd had with the rating was about 2 hours of Turok on someone else's Xbox 360, I'd hardly gotten my tip in the great vagina of adult-intended gaming. Ass Creed 2 was also the first time I'd seen so many genres tied together successfully. Historical realism, jumping directly into conspiracy thriller, into outright sci-fi. Free running, going into stealth, transitioning into action. It had a far more complex and challenging worldview than any fiction my sheltered Protestant upbringing had ever presented me before. I was enamored, and shocked, and obsessed. I played this game in depth into the wee hours of the school night. This game became my first platinum trophy, and I even had to replay like half the game due to the last 2 trophies glitching on my save file. I got balls deep into just about every last detail I could. Side missions, lore, secrets, Easter eggs, you name it. At one point, my dumb teenage mind even thought it would be cool to Photoshop my head onto the armor of Altair and make it my Facebook profile picture, for Christ's sake. I was hooked, like a crackhead, to, Reese's Pieces, and my dealer had brought seconds. The friend that loaned the game to me also let me borrow the then recent Brotherhood, which he had thoroughly played through in the months prior. And guess what? Also hooked, although I don't have a good gag for how well seconds can still blow you away. I already used my clown joke like twice after all. Maybe something about sloppy seconds? Nah. Still, I poured hours further into that one just as intensely as the previous. It was great, and I was basically destined to devote my undying loyalty to this series from there. I even start getting this weird twitch if I haven't played one of these games in a while, although my doctor blames it on my habit of eating unidentified road meat so often, but what does he know? So, without further ado, I present a brief and vulgar history of Assassin's Creed. I say it's brief, but that's a fucking lie. It's gonna take me several videos for all this. And I say vulgar because no innocent series would introduce itself with circus-themed analingus like I have here. It's all in the title, folks. Before I can tell you that story, I have to tell you this one. That's a literary allusion for those of you plebeians who never read. Long before we were ever jumping off of rooftops or impaling real historical people on hidden blades and or penises, Ubisoft had a slightly different classic on their hands, Prince of Persia. As you might guess from the title, the series starred as a prince, except the time he wasn't, in Persia. Pay attention now, complex stuff. The prince would run, climb, and parkour his way over historical and fantastical levels, and if you're noticing some foreshadowing here, you'd be abso-fucking-lutely on the right track. Prince of Persia had a good run of several games, and had really been the forerunner into 3D parkour platforming in video games. Usually it was even good too. Now, seeing as this is not a brief and vulgar history of POP, I don't actually care to get too much into the details of those games, other than just showing how the fundamentals would lead into Assassin's Creed. See, the project that would become Ass Creed was first envisioned as a Prince of Persia game. Ubisoft Montreal had been asked to make a new Prince game after the successes of previous entries. Since the new generation of consoles was coming to the scene with the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, they had a lot more processing power to work with for something very advantageous for their next title. Better cock physics. Kidding. It was an open world. They would be able to make larger areas and crowds for proper cities to play around in. Ubimont, as no one ever calls them, ended up doing some historical research inspired by the novel Alamut into the real, historical sect known as the Assassins, and decided that these guys were pretty bitchin'. Their idea was pitched as such. The young, titular prince would actually be a non-player character, and the player character would be an assassin hired on as bodyguard. Fittingly, they called this idea Prince of Persia, Assassin. Ubisoft proper didn't really care for this idea, since the prince would no longer be a player, but after agreeing just how bitchin' these assassins seem, the project became its own unique identity. The marketing team pointed out how the assassins also had a bitchin' creed. Nothing is true. Everything is permitted. Realizing how catchy the name Assassin's Creed is, I guess you could say, the rest was history. The prince was promptly dropped like Kevin Spacey from a Boy Scout speech, the game took off, and pretty quickly, this new IP would overshadow the already successful Prince of Persia franchise by like, so much, you guys. What really makes Assassin's Creed, Assassin's Creed? I mean, there have been more games than meth whores at a monster truck rally, with such a wildly different range of time periods, tones, and even gameplay features. So what really makes up the heart of the experience? I really sum it up by two parts: the gameplay mechanics and the lore. To be fair, that probably defines any game as what it is, but fuck it, it is far too late into the night as I'm writing this, and I ain't stopping now. Like your mother said, in regards to her skilled laborer fetish, I'm going to start by getting the mechanics down. The early games in the series used something the developers called puppeteering controls, wherein each face button was used as part of the assassin's body. Head, sword hand, open hand, feet. Pressing just the button alone would leave you in low profile, which means you're doing subtle actions that guards won't notice. Additionally, there is a button on the right shoulder of the controller, varied depending on which console you're using, that raises everything to high profile, which will get you noticed. For example, low profile on the empty hand button might gently nudge a civilian to the side, whereas high profile on the empty hand button is going to tackle the nearest person, like your mother, onto a skilled laborer. Going into high profile also allows you to sprint, jump, and climb as you move around. Any surface with noticeable ledges can be climbed so long as you direct yourself to the next handhold. If you're being stealthy, you can hide in crowds so long as you're acting like everyone else, or you can climb inside of concealment spots like haystacks or closets. Combat is primarily melee based, with high emphasis on careful parries. One button would be held to block, and if your timing was good, blocking and pressing attack at the same time, right as someone struck, would gain you an instant kill. Now, this puppeteering system was almost always getting tweaked as the games went on, being less and less strict to the button layout until it was finally dropped altogether in the most recent titles. The head button would become a button for tools. That is to say, tools your assassin uses, not tools as in douchebags, who would probably abuse a head button, come to think of it. Combat would lose the block button, with parries just being shuffled onto the formerly empty hand button, instead of sharing the attack button. Parkour would also be streamlined, going from high profile plus the feet button for full speed, to just high profile as the primary movement speed. Eventually, as the series went full role-playing game, this whole system was done away with. Movement only required the left stick, climbing can be done freely across any rough surface, with less following point to point. Stealth was no longer socially based, and combat became more along the lines of a Dark Souls type fighting system with light and heavy attacks on the right shoulder buttons. There are plenty of other noteworthy gameplay elements used throughout as well. All of the playable characters have eagle vision. For most of the playable assassins, this means they can see the world like a chemically intensive rave, where enemies, friends, and points of interest are color-coded. However, more recent protags have a much more literal eagle vision, where they can psychically see through the eyes of their eagle pets. Probably where the name came from, come to think of it. The series is also guilty of starting the trend modern open-world games have, where you climb tall shit before it lets you look at your map. To be fair, it does feel more justified here. Originally, the games presented this as the assassins gaining a view of the landscape around, although later games in the series seem to imply it's actually the assassins subconsciously syncing up to the knowledge within the always present eagles. as mentioned before in the psychically linked to eagles thing. The games get pretty fucking weird is what I'm trying to emphasize. Now, I'm not going to give every gameplay element here, as there will be plenty of that for each specific title, but you've all been such obedient little sluts for me, so I suppose I'll give you a quick tease of more. Racing! Fight clubs! Hidden treasure! Heists! Sweet, sweet lovemaking! Economics? Art collecting? Tower defense? Block puzzles? What the f... Alright, that's enough of that. It's time for some lore. To start, despite everything I've already said, these games are actually not set in the past. They actually started out in the future. I'll clarify. See, the main events of these games, set in various eras of human history, are being witnessed in a modern-day setting due to a concept called genetic memory, wherein your DNA holds all the memories of your ancestors. A special machine, dubbed the Animus, allows a user to experience said memories firsthand. The modern-day Templar Order, secretly running the Corporation Abstergo, kidnaps individuals with significant ancestors to study, and for the first several games, the focus was on Desmond Miles, a descendant to several crucial assassin bloodlines intersecting into one Nolan North.
Don't watch his channel.
And I wasn't kidding when I said they were set in the future. All games through Assassin's Creed 3, the 5th game in the series, were set in the year 2012, which was 5 years ahead of the original game. 3's release was the last explicitly future set game, at least that I'm aware of, with the plot happening about 2 months ahead of the real-world release date. While the modern-day segments are common knowledge for the series now, this actually was a big twist in the original game, as the marketing basically steered clear of this knowledge, aside from a few digital glitch effects in the trailers, and one voice actress accidentally letting a little bit of that information slip through. But no one was coming for Desmond, especially not Lucy Stillman, LMFAO.
This isn't exactly my idea of a good time.
How come you don't have to get wet?
Because you're here.
The history of the series is pretty obviously the focus, and the history of these games is pretty damn accurate, except when it isn't. Many of the assassination targets across the games are real historical people, and the series typically even gets the time and location of their deaths correct. True, most of these people probably didn't die of unexpected new holes, but hey, that's still good attention to detail. So, most of the games feel like historical recreations of the time period, and it would feel highly realistic if it weren't for the rest of the lore. Our first big deviation comes from the ongoing conspiracy war between the Assassins and the Templars. While both get their name from the Crusade-era version of their groups, the Templars date back at least to ancient Persia, very possibly earlier than that, and although the capital A Assassins didn't form an official group until Ptolemaic Egypt, individuals and small groups of lowercase a Assassins have operated since, get this, Adam and Eve. Zany, I know. We'll get back to that. The Templars seek to establish the New World Order. They view humanity and free will as too dangerous, and for what they view as the greater good, they aspire to enslave and dominate all humankind. Not in the sexy way either. Assassins, conversely, seek to fight for a more libertarian freedom. As though free will is a messy affair, it is better to let it be a messy affair than to steal it away from the people altogether. Both groups fight from the shadows as secretly as they can, except when they hang their logos fucking everywhere, with both sides doing better or worse on and off throughout different periods of time. World leaders are typically, though not exclusively, Templars. King Xerxes, Rodrigo Borgia, Adolf Hitler, and George Bush are all canonically members of the group. Assassins, as one might guess, are often those who murder the Templar leaders in return, such as the men who turned Julius Caesar into a ketchupy pincushion. Still pretty plausible if you're into Illuminati type shit. Don't get comfortable though, it's time to get weird. You see, human prehistory in this series is entirely defined by an ancient race of human-looking beings known as the Isu, also commonly known as the ones who came before, also known as the precursors. The Isu were far more scientifically advanced than even modern humans, with further senses than we possess. Remember the eagle vision I mentioned before? Some human Isu crossbred descendants have that as a remnant of Isu senses. Essentially, it's a sense for the true nature of reality as it exists, which is also linked to eagles for probably very logical bird reasons. Shut up, I'm no ornithologist. The Isu actually designed humans as their slaves, with special devices used to control and manipulate humanity to do their bidding. Collectively called the Pieces of Eden, a decent handful have survived long past the Isu themselves, and their capabilities not only led to most of humanity's technological advances, but many specific historical events, such as the Tunguska event, the 1755 Lisbon earthquake, and Jesus Christ's resurrection. Pieces of Eden can really look like just about anything. Swords, crystal skulls, old napkins, frisbees with a glory hole, etc. Although most commonly they just appear to be spheres called Apples of Eden. They get the name because Adam and Eve stole one in the process to liberate their fellow humans from the Isu, leading to a long war between the two groups. Certainly at this point it should be clear that the Isu are even more past tense than a goat intestine condom. That's because they're dead. Womp womp. 75,000 years before the Common Era, the Sun decided it would release a fat load of a coronal mass ejection down planet Earth's chin, flipping the magnetic poles. Radiation from the Sun burned the planet for weeks, and most everyone was killed. Humans, who were built to be resilient, managed fewer than 10,000 survivors. The Isu themselves had too few survivors to cream pie each other back into a proper population, and save for some human crossbred descendants, they disappeared, although not before being mismemorialized as the Greco-Roman pantheon of gods. In summary, Assassin's Creed is a series where humans lie in beds that show them the memories of dead men because ancient social groups have fights with sleeve knives over ancient gadgets left behind by dudes murdered by the sun. You follow? Good. I'm nearly 20 minutes into this bitch, and I can finally talk about the very first game in the franchise. I am off to a great start. Assassin's Creed, the original, was touted as a historical sandbox game with social stealth and free running, and it's a good thing they advertised it as such. See, Assassin's Creed the original is a historical sandbox game with social stealth and free running. Probably wouldn't have been so well received if it were advertised as a kart racer. Set in the year 1191 AD, during the Third Crusade, players took on the mantle of Altair ibn La'ahad, a member of the Secret Order of Assassins. Altair has been tasked with taking down a conspiracy of the Knights Templar across Jerusalem, Damascus, and Acre. To get to your target, you had to gain information through eavesdropping, intimidation, pickpocketing, and the like. Once you gained enough intel, you'd move in for the kill. It's a really simple structure, and although I have seen many random internet denizens waxing lyrical for what they view as a fairly realistic way to do research pre-Wikipedia, I truthfully think it's a little too fucking simple for its own good. The first time Altair stabs a dude he just finished bullying information out of, you might be like, whoa, murdering a witness, that's brutal. The 8th time you'll be wishing he got to offing the bastards faster, so you can get to the real, more interesting homicides. Don't get me wrong, hunting each Big T Templar is very interesting, but the in-between stuff is just so redundant. And you better do the in-between bits as well, because the less you do, the more limited your options will be when you actually hunt down your target. The rest of the game is also simpler than a white Protestant screwing his bored wife in the missionary position. Upgrades all just happen automatically as you go. There's no money to spend, and you'll get no new swords, armor, or outfits. Assassinations really only function when standing right next to someone, as air assassinations and hidden assassinations won't exist until the next game, and Altair doesn't even figure out that pulling a jackass off a ledge will also kill him until the PlayStation Portable game. Blending only works with groups of scholars instead of anyone in the general crowd. I mean, sure, you are wearing the same color as them, But Altair also has more knives on him than one of those novelty knife shops at every tourist destination, so guards must really assume they're academic murder weapons. Side missions aren't really a thing beyond collecting flags, saving citizens, or killing some random, generic Templars around the map. The ones who came before are only briefly alluded to by the modern-day dialogue, with no other indication where the mind control orb came from. It's certainly not shallow by any means, but when literally every sequel has more depth than spelunking Mother Gaia's earthen pussy, it's quite noticeably different. There's also a lot more weird oversight that later games tend to lack. Even though Altair can canonically swim, you do not want to hit the water here. Step in so much as a puddle of hobo piss, and Altair has a fucking stroke and dies on the spot. Dramatic little bitch, really. He also just completely lacks a Middle Eastern accent in this game, and it sounds very jarring surrounded by other Middle Easterners.
Altair, you've caused quite a stir.
I've done as requested. Sabran's life is ended.
So it is. So it is.
Later games would fix it. The fucking PSP title even got it right.
Barnabas?
Ah, yes. Who sent you?
Alexander of Limassol said I might find you here. I've been following Armand Bouchard.
Then there's the fact that guards will just immediately try to kill you if they see you galloping on your horse, which can only mean that I must have missed a speed limit sign or something? I could keep going. So I think I will! Assassins of this time period have written fingers removed for the hidden blade to function, and yet only Altair walks around doing the shocker. There are no subtitles in this game, which is going to suck for you because the audio mixing in this bitch is rather dramatically unbalanced. Eagle vision is also fairly useless, as you can only use it in first person when you aren't moving and are at full sync. There's just a lot of little nonsense items like this. Don't despair, fans. I am saving the good stuff for last. Assassin's Creed, the original, does tell a very interesting story, and does an even better job setting the foundations that the rest of the series is carefully built upon. We start out with a strange, disorienting techno setup where everything's blurry and no one has faces, voices are panicking in the background, clearly not belonging to any visible participants. Even though I basically call that a normal Tuesday evening, the characters clearly think it's a bad thing, and so we are quickly pulled back into reality. We find an old creep and a CGI Kristen Bell watching us in bed. We are Desmond Miles. The old guy is a massive prick named Warren Vidic, who wants to find ancient artifacts in Desmond's genetic memory, and Kristen Bell works for Warren and is actually named Lucy Stillman. And Lucy is much more sympathetic to Desmond, always as friendly as possible, and trying to keep him in good health despite the mad science going on. As it turns out, pharmaceutical companies are evil! And this one, Abstergo, has kidnapped Desmond in their scheme to rule the world. Throughout the rest of the game, Desmond sees and hears of other unethical activities, such as human experimentation that led to the last subject going insane and committing suicide. Also, Vidic just straight up watches Desmond sleeping, which is super pervy. Good thing Desmond only sleeps fully clothed on top of the covers, or this might be weird. Desmond's less than voluntary task is to view the memories of his ancestor Altair, who ends up being one of the most important historical assassins. So after a quick info dump to explain the technobabble of the Animus and viewing ancestral memories, Desmond is put back under, and it does work a little better this time. Right off the bat, we learn that the assassins have 3 central tenets to their creed. Don't kill innocent dudes, be real sneaky, and you sure as hell better not do something that'll hurt the Assassin Brotherhood. Altair, on a special mission, immediately fucks up all 3 rules. He's kind of a dick at first. He murders an old man because he thinks he might alert the guards, and then immediately runs in, alerting the guards, and completely fails to kill the guy he's after, Robert de Sable, leading to an attack on the assassin headquarters in Masyaf. Another assassin on the mission, Malik, loses his brother and his arm in the incident, but still manages to bring back an Apple of Eden to the assassin leader, Al-Mualim, which is what they were actually there for. Al-Mualim, who in no way looks sketchy and evil, takes the artifact, and then executes Altair for breaking the rules. It's all an illusion, though. Altair isn't dead whatsoever, and just gets demoted back to starting rank. To earn his status back, Altair is tasked with his hunt for the Nine, where he kills 9 main Templars scheming to control the land. With each stabbing, Altair begins to see more character growth as he realizes just how grey the morality at hand is. The Templars tend to show depth and nuance in their deaths, which you know because they talk for so fucking long in this game.
Let go your burden.
I'll rest now, yes. The endless dream calls to me. But before I close my eyes, I must know what will become of my children.
You mean the people made to suffer your cruel experiments? They'll be free now to return to their homes.
Homes? What homes? The sewers? The portals? The prisons that we hide them from?
You took these people against their will.
Yes. What little will there was for them to have. Are you really so naive? Do you appease a kind child simply because...
Ugh. Now, this weird void gets implied in later games to be something the protagonists see as some sort of eagle vision linked psychic projection, maybe? Only somewhat taking place in the real world, but this game in particular makes no attempt to explain it, so it just sort of looks like all the guards are waiting patiently for their boss to finish bleeding out as they wax lyrical. One target also has a body double, a woman named Maria, whom Altair chooses not to murder. Character growth. She's going to come back around in the next video more importantly, so for now, just know that she ain't dead. Finally, Altair kills Robert de Sable in front of King Richard the Lionheart nonetheless. Robert is like, "Hey man, Al-Mualim is totally one of us and killed us all so he can keep his ball to himself." Altair is like, "Ah shit," and runs back to Masyaf to confront Al-Mualim. King Richard just, continues to crusade. What a Chad. When Altair gets back to Masyaf, Al-Mualim is using the Apple of Eden to mind control everyone and make holograms appear. He's like, "There are no gods! These pieces did all that crazy stuff that people thought were miracles! What?" And then Altair promptly kills him. In the modern day, Desmond finds out that Abstergo is actually the Templars and that they wanted to see that hologram with all its sweet, sweet booty. Lucy keeps Desmond from being killed, showing him that she's an assassin bro, and then Desmond accidentally discovers he has eagle vision. The first thing he sees is blood symbols scrawled all over the room by the previous subject that killed himself. And Desmond's like, "What the fuck?" The end. So before we call it wraps on this rapidly expanding video, I think it's only fair to reflect on the legacy this game left behind. The series itself certainly could not have become what we all love today without what this game established. In fact, I think learning from the flaws present are the main reason that the next game in particular is so widely acclaimed. The whole industry itself seemed to take notice too, as more games than before began to treat walls and buildings as something more than just big barriers to explode a car against. Altair too made his impression. Not only is he playable in more games than most of the other characters in the series, and not only are his robes in nearly every game as well, but he also got to play Magic Soccer on the Wii that one time. This is real! So that's it. That's how this massive ball got rolling. If you enjoyed what you saw here, please give a like to the video and subscribe. I'm personally really excited to be plunging into the widespread legs of Assassin's Creed 2 and all the foreplay content that led up to it. Without further ado, thanks for watching, and you'll see me here next time. You pervert.